יש עתיד, הוא כבר כאן, יש עתיד כי הגיע הזמן, יש עתיד שאליו הולכים, יש עתיד אם רק נחליט.
I would go into my personal history and biography, but I think that we have 5 minutes and we have pressing issues within the country, and those are the issues that we have to talk about. Yesh Atid is here, it's a party, we're here because we've come to make change. It's time for a new direction in the country, it's time for a new politics instead of the old politics, as we like to say. If these problems exist and the old politics haven't dealt with it, it's time to give new people a chance with new ideas. We have 5 basic issues, internal issues within Israel that we want to address with real plans to tackle each of these problems. Number 1, the state of Israel this year in 2012, we crossed a line. 50% of the first graders this year in Israel are either Haredi or are Arab. I'm not anti-Arab, I'm not anti-Haredi. However, anyone who's looking towards the future and understands what that means, it means that 12 years from now, over 50% of the graduates of high school ideologically believe that they are not part of Israeli society. Ideologically, they don't serve in the army. Individuals might, but as an ideology, they don't. This is something which absolutely has to be tackled, has to be addressed. I certainly can say that I've been on the forefront in a lot of the battles related to some of the extremism and isolationism which this comes from. Yesh Atid has a plan called Shirut Shaveh L'Kulam. It's been in place since the past spring. It was announced and rolled out. It was something which impressed me, put together by generals on the one hand, and people within the Haredi community on the other hand. It's a plan which says everyone is going to serve, either in the army or in national service, but that absolutely must be the law. Issue number 2 is the issue of education. Unfortunately, Israel, which I think used to be known as the country of education, we've plummeted. 48% of our students, 48% of our students pass their bagriyot. It's not acceptable to us to be a country which is 89th in the world in math, 42nd in science, and 37th in reading comprehension. 37th in reading comprehension for the people of the book, Jewish people. It's not acceptable, it has to change. We have a plan for a complete overhaul in education, made by education experts. I have a background in education, a master's education. I've studied the plan, been part of the plan. It makes sense, it works. We want to put that plan into place. Number 3, we live in a country today where I'm looking at the crowd. Usually, I very often speak to young crowds. Just know that your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, there's one little piece of bad news I have for them, and that is they will not be able to purchase an apartment in the state of Israel. They cannot purchase an apartment. It takes 127 monthly paychecks to save up 11 years of paychecks to be able to purchase an average 4-room apartment in Israel. That's not acceptable. We have a plan to deal with that, including, and I'm very happy there's a representative of Shas that's here, including putting back the criteria which was supposed to be there for subsidies. What is that criteria? Last summer, the Trachtenberg Committee said those who have an earning capacity, those who go to the IDF or go to university, they receive a subsidy for housing. It makes sense. It makes sense. That was changed by the Shas Minister of Housing to Vetek B'Nisuin, which means people who are veterans of marriage. Veterans of marriage now receive it. I know it in Ramat Beit Shemesh myself. I've experienced it. I've battled it. They're the ones. If you're married for a number of years, if you're a young couple married for a number of years, i.e. the Shas community, you get a subsidy. We're going to change that, put the criteria back into place where everyone who serves in the army, everyone who goes to university and works, they get the subsidy. We have to deal with the economic issues in Israel, the basic daily living costs. We have a plan to cut utility costs, certainly water, gas, and electricity. And then finally, the corruption in government in general. Within a government today which is bloated, it's out of control. You have a country of this comparable size in Sweden. They have 7 ministers, they run the country, it's fine. Israel, the same size, 36 ministers in the last government, and deputy ministers, and ministers without portfolio who have no position whatsoever. That has to change. Yesh Atid has a plan in place to change the system in terms of the government, to raise the electoral threshold from 2% to 6%, so that sectarian parties cannot pull at the government and to make their own demands. It's time to work together, and that gets to my last point, and that is the Yesh Atid list. The Yesh Atid list is made of people from all backgrounds in Israeli society, from Haredi, through secular, Russians, Ethiopians, Anglos, from all backgrounds who have come together, people from outside of politics, who have a history, a background of activism in all their areas, who have said it's time to get involved. Our country is failing in all these internal areas. We must work together and make this happen. And that, by the way, is what Zionism is really all about. Zionism, and don't let anybody fool you to say anybody's not a Zionist. Everyone on the stage is a Zionist. We all want to work to make the state of Israel better. Our definition is, it's time to make the state of Israel better from within, build our society to where it should be, and I have no doubt that once we tackle these internal issues, everything else will fall into place. Please vote for Yesh Atid. We have three representatives from our 15,000 volunteers here to help you out after we're done. Thank you very much. I look forward to the questions.
A gap in this society here, and not nothing else than this.
Okay, Mr. Shamir, I'm sorry to surprise you. You don't know the Shas people. Where you know us from?
Well, I do know the Shas people. We have a Shas mayor in Beit Shemesh, and I'd like to look you in the eye and say, your party has destroyed my city.
I'm telling you.
You destroyed, hold on. You destroyed
3 weeks
my
ago,
hometown.
you gone to the other party. Tell all of us.
Hold on.
Which party
Hold on.
you joined
I'd like
3
to
weeks
say,
ago?
I'd like to make my point.
You're jumping
I'd like to
from
make my
pool to
point.
pool.
That's not
You're jumping
answering.
from bed to bed. Come on. 3 weeks ago,
Can I finish my point?
salad.
Can I finish my point?
Go ahead. Let's speak one person at a time.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
A beautiful city that was filled with people from all backgrounds, all walks of life. The city that I moved to 8 years ago because it had Haredim, secular, Dati, Masorati, Ethiopians and Russians. And your party, I'm sorry, has destroyed that city with an extremism and an exclusivism which I've been fighting for the last 3 years, wasting my time instead of trying to do positive things, fighting against this control. The Misrad HaPnim, the Interior Ministry, the Misrad HaShikun, the Housing Ministry, and the Mayor of Beit Shemesh. So to stand here and not address her question, which was a fair question, we have to make changes to the conversion policies. I have in my book an argument to make a unified conversion policy. We can do it if we're willing to sit down and work together. It can be done with an orthodox halacha. With an orthodox halacha, it can be done that everyone is satisfied, and that's what we have to do to save our nation.
Okay, Menachem.
Want to defend it. No one will ever get away with accusing me of hatred of any kind. I've dedicated my life to unity and trying to bring people together, and I was accused of being involved in hatred. If I'm pointing out that there are flaws within our society which we have to fix and sit down and work together, our plans are not force people anything. Sit down, we have real plans to work together and find compromise, but no one can accuse me or anyone in Yesh Atid of hatred or lack of unity. If there's any party which represents that unity which we're talking about, including the question of the pluralism, it is the Yesh Atid party, both in terms of who is on the list and in terms of what our plans and programs are for the future of Israel.
All right.
It's all about unity, nothing about hatred. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Your first question. Dov Lipman.
Yes, we would, assuming that our agenda will be met in the government. We would be the only party to be a moderating voice to a lot of the other extremism that we see in other parties. So yes, we would, to be able to move forward and make the changes in this country which have to be made, these
Okay.
internal issues.
All right, Neri Shirion.
I have a few things to say to answer that question. Number one, in the last 11 months, Yair has shown unbelievable leadership in building our party. The party right now has from one person, has 102 branches across the country, more than 15,000 volunteers, a very strong branch, by the way, here in Netanya, and he has shown tremendous leadership in doing that. Aside from that, the next step of leadership is to understand that you have to surround yourself with people who are experts in the various areas, and he's brought on board, I'm not going to go through the list right now, he's brought on board people with expertise in every area, surrounding himself with them, that's what we do. The final thing is, second to last thing is, sometimes you don't have to have experience to get something done. When I was faced with the issue of religious extremism in Beit Shemesh, I don't have a degree in that. Sometimes you just have a feeling, I have to stand up and do something because things have reached that point, and you get up and you do it and you can actually succeed. The last point is, if the people with the experience have botched up these areas so badly, And we are where we are in education and in housing and in all of these issues, that it's time to give the chance to those without the experience.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen.
To all of you for sitting and asking such wonderful questions. You know, there are other settings throughout the country where these types of panels take place. There was a series of 21 of them in high schools across Israel, and Yesh Atid came out number 1 in those panels. Today it was announced that we won in the vote yesterday in the IDC, the program in Herzliya. People who study the information and ask the right questions are rushing to support and help Yesh Atid, and the reason is very clear. And I think all of you saw this tonight. We're a party which is presenting the solutions to legislate real plans, real legislation to deal with the burning issues within Israeli society. We're the only party tonight that talked about the housing crisis and that we have a plan to deal with it. We're the only party that talked about the education problems and a plan to deal with it. The only party that talked about the utilities, which I know are certainly choking me every single month, and we have a plan to deal with it. The only party that brought up, before the question was asked, the issue of electoral reform. And just to let you know how important that issue is to us, we will not sit in the Netanyahu government if that issue is not dealt with. We have no problem sitting in the opposition and building ourselves from there and going further. We're here for the long term. Yair Lapid, who is known as being super secular, stood up numerous times and has said, not only does he believe in God, but our right to be in this land is because of God, the Bible, and our traditions. I think it's a wonderful breath of fresh air that someone like me, with a background from Ner Israel in Baltimore, a Haredi yeshiva, can work together with Yair Lapid and everyone else involved and move things together. The last issue, the last bullet point was the Haredi issue. My son, God willing, is going to be serving in the Israeli army in a few years, and I'm very proud that he will be representing Israel. But in order for him not to feel like a second-class citizen doing so, I had to pull him out of the Haredi education system, and he's flourishing where he is, but we have to make major changes, not to force the Haredim to change. The Haredim want it. They call me. They're in touch with me. They want to see changes take place, and they say, Dov, thank you for being there to lead the way to make those changes take place. If anyone wants further information about Yesh Atid, Michal and Elisa are right over there. You can come to them, give them your information. We have an English Facebook page. We hope that on January 22nd you will put the pay hey for Po into the ballot box, because that's what we're here. We're here to serve all of you. Banu l'shanot, we came to make change, and we really believe that the future of Israel is really within our hands, and you can all make that difference. Thank you.
יש עתיד הוא כבר כאן, יש עתיד כי הגיע הזמן, יש עתיד שאליו הולכים, יש עתיד אם רק נחליט.